Hey everybody, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that Felon Doctor, here to talk more about my journey in hopes that it helps you through yours. That's the series that we're in right now. I'm probably going to shift it pretty soon to a different series that I think I'm going to call Toxic. I'm looking forward to that one. But for now, we're still talking a little bit about me, my journey, some of the things I've been through. And if you are new here, because I just got some people on from TikTok, I'm a leadership coach. I have founded the Seasons and Signs Academy for mind, body, soul, healing, and alignment. So if you're interested in any of that, coaching or the academy, links are below. Find me in my socials, message me, etc. So we're going to talk a little bit about something that I don't know if you've gone through this. It has a lot to do with reputation. Okay, so this may or may not apply depending on who you are. There have been too many times in my journey that I have lost my reputation, right? And so that is something I've always carried with me. It is, if you know anything about the book, The Scarlet Letter, I've always thought of myself as a scarlet letter. Not just because Hester Prynne has this like fantastically embroidered letter A, and my last name begins with A, although certainly that, but also because like she's branded as this like terrible adulterer, and all she does in the remainder of the book and of her life is like flaunt it and help people. Like that's about it, right? And so and she keeps the name of the man with whom she cheated a secret until the end of the book. I won't ruin it for you. But there's a lot of parallels between Hester Prynne and Michelina Eichel's journey. And I will just tell you something that is true for me and might be true for you. If you've ever lost your reputation, on one hand, it's a tough, irreconcilable loss because you can't quite get it back, right? Like for me personally, there's never going to be a time where I can go back and not be a felon. There's never going to be a time that I can go back and not be a sex offender. The Crucible talked about this, where it was like, when you're marked with the aspersion of witchcraft, like you're not going back from that. It's the worst thing you could be marked as. I would say probably in this society, I have the worst two stigmas you could possibly have, right? Like it's a little bit more socially acceptable even to be a murderer or possibly a rapist, like than a sex offender, which again, don't ask me why, but that's where we're at. And so, because people equate sex offense with pedophilia when they should equate sex offense with being societally offensive in a sexual way, and pedophilia with like the urge to touch children, which is creepy and weird and bizarre. Whereas being a sex offender, you can do anything and become a sex offender if you are nude in public, if you're urinating in public, if you do anything that's sexually offensive, you'll be labeled as a sex offender, right? So we have now blended those as a society, which is our own laziness because they're not actually one and the same. But anyhow, so saying that I have like, pretty much the worst things that society can bestow upon somebody, I will tell you that there is a loss that is irreconcilable when you have that kind of public stigma. Like I'm never gonna not be tainted with that, right? I was actually talking to someone yesterday and he was like, yeah, there's always like a taint to you, like a taintedness. And I was like, yes, there is actually. Like, and I felt that right when I walked out of the jail, October 7th, 2018. I was like, I am now fundamentally different from everybody else because I have spent time in captivity in a way that they have not. And I felt so dirty that there was a street fair going on in the town where the jail was, and the street fair was happening on the street, right? And there was a sidewalk that's like the backside of the tents, and I felt so dirty that I didn't even walk among the people. I walked on the sidewalk away from them because that's how different I felt. Right? And so there is a thing that happens when you get your reputation torn into shreds that casts you aside differently. Right? And so now, let's be honest, going to jail, being a sex offender, at that point I wasn't, but that's not the first time I lost my reputation. Like the first time I lost my reputation was when I was 14, and I was deemed this like huge slut. What ended up actually happening was like, I was raped, I lost my best friend, there were a lot of like things going on, and I just got sort of painted in this light of like being a massive slut. Fine. And so, like I said, I've always been too sexually offensive for society. So like, that's fine. But when you lose your reputation, if you've had that happen to you, when you lose your like upstanding citizenship, when you lose that like general opinion that you're just like morally upright and morally upstanding, it can be a very crippling thing if and when you allow it to be. For me, what I have found is there's a lot of freedom in it. Personally, for me, there was so much freedom. When everybody found out, when my show went viral, I was like, thank God, I don't have to lie about this anymore. I had 8 months where I had been like, basically living a lie. And I was like, this is awful. I was like, this is terrible. And when it all broke, I mean, it was humiliating. It was publicly shaming. I was mortified. Like, obviously, there was a lot of like feelings that happened there, but there was also relief where I was like, whew, thank God everybody knows, because that means I don't have to lie about it anymore. People think worse things happen than it did, but fine, like let them think what they think. Now at least I don't have to hide anymore. And there is a freedom that can come in losing your reputation. I am not saying go out and lose your reputation. I am saying that there is a freedom that comes in bursting people's perceptions, especially if they're false. Because I know me, I've never painted myself as this like paradigm of chastity and virtue. Like, I've never done it. When you're a teacher, they'll put you on a pedestal of morality, right? When you're a cop, when you're a firefighter, when you're a nurse, when you're any kind of public servant, you stop being able to be human and you are just expected to be this like shining example. And like, that's not your girl. And that's never been me, and it never fucking will be me, honestly. So I don't particularly mind, because I'm like, that's an impossible standard that I'm not interested in. Thanks, but no thanks, right? Rather you see me as human. And so, but I'm not saying lose your reputation. I am saying if you lose, if you have lost, if you have been the subject of ridicule and of slander, and whether it was justified or not, there is a loss that comes with that. And I understand clearly. And here's how you can reframe it. That's what I'm saying to you now, right? I'm not saying go lose your reputation if you have one. I am saying, though, your reputation has very little to do with your moral integrity or your character. Okay, I will say that, because I'll tell you right now, anybody and everybody is entitled to think whatever they want about me. I know the truth of who I am. I know my own morality. I know my pitfalls. I know my shortcomings. And I also know where I'm really great. You know, and so it's like, y'all can think whatever you want about me. Doesn't make it true. Reputation is one thing. It can be very good to have, certainly. If you've lost it, it doesn't mean you can't get it back, you know. But also, reputation can be a very limiting, pigeonholing thing, right? Like, if you're always reputed to be the house where everybody hangs out, and you eventually like, I don't want that anymore, you will still feel obligated to show up and keep that reputation, even though you're like, I don't want you people coming over here, right? I'm just coming up with something small and silly, kind of, and possibly relatable, depending on who you are, right? If you always have the reputation, if you always have the reputation for showing up a certain way at your job, you always have to show up that way at your job. As an example, like, and it wasn't sustainable for me, but I always like set the precedent of looking like very professional at work. Like, I just did, you know, and I would always wear heels, and I was like very professional. And like, after 5 or 6 years, like, people just got to know that's how Miss Eichel's gonna show up. So it was very hard for me to show up in anything else, like, ever. Because it was like, it was hard for me to dress down. I mean, I also looked like I was one of the kids, right? So like, there was that. the first like 3 or 4 years was basically just so that I had the authority, because I'm 4 years from when I started teaching. I was 23 and the kids I taught were 17, right? So like there was a very small gap of age. And so I was very strict in my boundaries. Like I always showed up in a certain way. Like I was just like very strict in my boundaries. And so, I mean, I was strict in my boundaries for 6 years until I wasn't anymore. And then like, look what happened. But when I had set up for 4 or 5 years this precedent that I don't dress down, like Ms. Eichel doesn't dress down, that reputation in the school was something I had to live up to. Whereas like other teachers could wear denim on a Friday, I was not the one for it, because I was like, I now have a reputation of never doing that. So I can't do it because I'm going to hear a whole bunch of crap about it. Then I go against the precedent I've set for myself. Like, and again, silly example, but we get these reputations and it puts us in a place that we care what people think, and we have to show up in alignment in accordance with those reputations. So if you have lost your reputation, it doesn't necessarily have to be the worst thing. I'm sorry if it has happened, but let it be freeing to you, because then you can reinvent, rediscover, rework who you really are and not how you showed up in X, Y, and Z case, right? So all that to say, sometimes we're so busy mourning the loss of who the world thought we were that we forget to embrace who we actually are and use that as an opportunity to show the world who we are, right? And so like, I think that's very important. I think it's very important to take the time in any loss and recalibrate and find your own like true north. What are the things that are essentially true to you? For my part, personally, like, there are certain things that, like, I don't know that it'll, in 30 years, I mean, I'm serving a life sentence, right? So there's that. But in 30 years, I don't know if I'll ever live down the fact that I sent a nude picture to one of my students. Like, I don't really know that I will. I don't really know that I won't. I don't really know that I care. But, like, that's probably just going to always be something that, like, exists because it exists in the reality of, like, the framework of life. But, like, for me, I want that, and I've said this before, to be the least interesting thing about me. Like, it's, like, that almost has nothing to do with me. Except for the fact that, like, I made a bad life decision. Okay. You know? The other thing that I really like, as far as, like, my own reputation lost, is that I get to decide for me how I want to show up sexually. Right? It's like, that's always a thing that we don't know how to navigate, especially as women, I feel. Because sex sells, but also sex is shameful. Like, if you're a woman who wants sex, like, be sexy but don't want sex. Enjoy sex but not too much. Yeah. Sex and women is its own conversation for a whole nother day that I won't get into. So for me, I'm like, do I really care that I've been branded as sexually offensive? No, I don't. Not really. Not really. Like, okay, let me be sexually offensive. We are coming into a time where sex and technology is being more like championed, right? With like OnlyFans and this, that, and the other thing. And I get to decide, okay, well, do I want to go with that sexually scandalous like ideology? And do I want to do an OnlyFans? And like, do I want to like showcase my body in that way? And like, do I want to put my body up for public consumption? Can if I want to, right? It goes right along with the new reputation that I have. No, I don't, because I've never been that person. And I'm still not that person. Like, yes, my nude pictures were taken and made public, but like, I didn't intend for that to happen. Like, I didn't even really want to send them. Like, he asked. And I was like, well, I don't really know how to say no to this, so sure. People pleasing. But anyhow, what it comes down to is like, no, I don't want to put my body up for public consumption. I could. I've been labeled as sexually offensive, but I don't want to. Lots of people would like to see it, certainly, but I don't want to. And I get to know what's true about me and what's not. What's reputable about me and what isn't. Because that's a reputation I don't care for. I had to decide this in a lot of things because I now had a reputation as a felon. Do I want to be a felon? Like, do I want to act like a criminal? Like, do I want to do that? And I was like, no, not really, because it's not really aligned with who I am. So, like, you can affix whatever label. That's basically what a reputation is, guys, by the way, is just a label. You can affix whatever label you want onto this package. It doesn't actually mean it represents what the package is. Do you know what I mean? So any label that is subscribed to you, any reputation that you have, for good or for ill, honestly, because I've had both, becomes less important and less relevant than who you actually are, you know? And so when that reputation falls away, when one label peels away, it does make space for you to show who you actually are or reclaim some aspect of yourself, or, you know, that reputation falling away also gives you the ability to stop identifying with that label, which I think is an important thing. So if you've lost your reputation at any point in life and you're still mourning the loss, use it as an opportunity to get more solid in your identity, right? Because that's what I'm always talking about, right? Mindset, identity, self-awareness, communication, like those are the things. Those are the things that I strengthened up to the point where, like, I know myself. So, all that to say, if you need help in any of those areas, strengthening them up, find my socials, go to the academy and sign up. I hope that is helpful to you. I might do another one or two about my own journey, and then I'm going to move into probably like toxicity, which I think is such a fun concept, because we all are a little toxic until we're not toxic anymore. Let's be honest. So we're all little monsters, and I can't wait to talk about it. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about myself. Hopefully it's helpful. And then I will see you guys. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the things, grow the channel, and I will see you guys on the next video.